Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, and welcome to Tell Me More podcast with Allsteel. I'm going to kind of be your host, sort of, today. I'm Andrea, Director of Client Solutions, and with me I have Jason and Kina. Jason, who are you?
I am Vice President of Design, so there you go.
All right, there you go. And Kina?
Hi, I'm Kina, and I'm the National A&D Director.
All right. So the three of us, we're going to have a little bit of a conversation around what we mean by the intentional office. So a couple of years ago, we were having all the debate, all the conversation we were referring to as the evolving workplace. And I think that's a perpetual conversation. The workplace will forever be evolving. But we wanted to become a little bit more specific on what we're seeing. And our belief is that our clients are really looking for what is the purpose, what is the intention of the office. And as we've walked through the chaos of the last couple of years, and everybody's talking about a hybrid model, then they're talking about return to work, then they're talking about fluidity with all of the remote employees that have joined them. And really what we are seeing them ask of us as a manufacturer and as supposed experts of the workplace is, what is the purpose? How can I support my individual employees as they're coming in? And so we really started to think through, we want employees to want to be in the office, and they're going to want to be there because the workplace is providing something of benefit to them. It is helping them be more effective, more efficient, and how they're able to get their job done and accomplish what they want and reduce some stress. So in conversation, we kind of came up with these 6 major maybe intentions of why an individual would want to come into a physical workplace. And that's kind of a little bit where we're going to be heading with this conversation. But I'm going to rattle them off real quick. So one would be focus. So when you think about my work that I individually am contributing to an organization, where do I want to get that done? Then there's collaboration. Collaboration, I think, bleeds into innovation. We've had some good debates on the differentiation between the two. So certainly collaboration, innovation. Socialization, we think, is a big one and maybe kind of is going a little under the radar, but something we want to flesh out a little bit in the conversation here. And then the last 2 are mentorship and learning. So mentorship could be either prescriptive and pre-planned or a little bit more ad hoc, and the building of a network, and then lastly learning, whether it's done individually or in a group setting. So those are some of the key pillars, key intentions behind this. So Jason, just question for you. What do you think is the most interesting of those kind of 6 intentions to dig in more on? Where do you want to go?
You're like children. You have to love them all equally. We got on this idea of intentionality, kind of watching ourselves a bit, that as we were all struggling with hybrid and the return to office, we noticed this kind of increase in intentional meetings. Meaning people would say, oh, well, we haven't been together for a while, so let's have a quarterly meeting. And, people would come to the office. And so the natural reaction I think most companies had in that was to build more collaborative and social spaces. Saying, well, if people are going to come in, the remote and the hybrids and the locals come together, we're going to have lots of social spaces, lots of collaborative. And that's absolutely true. The most interesting thing to me is watching clients and ourselves. The thing I didn't anticipate was focus. Mm-hmm. That people who are visiting or people who are coming together still need to get focus work done, but they're in this temporal mode. They're kind of just borrowing space. And so you can almost observe this behavior when you're having your quarterly meeting, whether it's on site or at a hotel, where people are still struggling with, where do I go to get away and get focus work done? Mm-hmm. And so you see this emergence of a new type of focus space that's happening, and that's pretty exciting for us. Whether it's what we're working on as a micro office, this idea that a phone booth is great, but it's a little too small to get anything done. Mm-hmm. And you still feel like you're borrowing it. So how do I have some semblance of something a little bigger than that, that's super efficient, that supports video, but still makes me available to be a mentor coach. And there's those tensions. So focus was a bit of the surprise for me at the end of this, because you would have naturally said it's all about collaboration.
Yeah, and I think we've had some great discussions over the last year about generational shifts. And I think when you talk about focus, so many Gen Zers are coming into the office because their home life is different. They've got a noisy roommate, they've got less space, maybe it's less inspiring. And so just to dissect the population a little bit and figure out what are their need states, and that can kind of help distinguish a little bit what we need to explore more evitably. How about you, Kina? Where are you kind of seeing some clients when they're thinking through work planning and strategy start to, whether, not that they're naming these specific explicitly, but what are you hearing them talk about?
Every client that I've ever worked with thinks about culture that they would be creating in their workspace. And that means that whether they're aware of it or not, they're wanting to incorporate all 6 of these intentional design pillars into the spaces that they're creating. So, the focus, mentorship, innovation, collaboration, socialization, and learning. So I sort of see it everywhere, and it kind of continuing throughout.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We've mentioned before, we said space, your workplace, your space should be a reflection of who you are as an organization today, and has also kind of helped to tease out who you want to become, where you want to go as an organization. I was talking to a designer, an architect, actually a couple of weeks ago, and she said to me, I love furniture because furniture makes people do things. And I was like, that's so true. This space typology, the assets, the physical structure of the space, in addition to the furniture, can direct behavior, can direct culture, can direct interactions. So that's a great point. All right, what about product development and application studies? You talked a little bit, Jason, about the micro office. Is there anything else that we're thinking about as it relates to these 6 specific pillars?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely over the years been different approaches to how you think about designing the office, whether it was very functionally based or department based. I mean, there was the accounting department, the marketing department. And then there was an evolution of that was more neighborhood based. We'll say, well, it's about these people learning from each other, or them working on a topic cross-functionally, and we bring people into neighborhoods. There's a third one that's been out there for a while, but it's emerging in a new way, which is this project-centric version. And, a real-life example of that is, how do you make the work visible? Let me give you an extreme example of how it might work with leadership. What if instead of leaders having their own individual offices, leaders have a room that is around the project or the workflow they own? And they kind of already do that. Like if you go to the VP of Finance, I bet the VP of Finance has a hidden war room or a project room somewhere in the building. Mm-hmm. So you're really duplicating the space. The new thinking is to say, well, why don't we put that together? And what is maybe the manager or the leader's office merges that is the finance project room or the finance war room, or where the work is live. It's all posted up on the wall. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Finance leader just happens to live in there when they're there. Mm-hmm. And when they have a team meeting, it's in that room, not in a separate room. And when people pass by, they're seeing the team live. Yep. This is connecting people together and kind of flipping the idea that the work flow is the primary thing we're supporting, not necessarily these individual needs of separate rooms.
And what I love about this idea, when you think about individual networking and our ability to have these run-ins, I know for me personally, when I'm planning my week and the days I'm going to be in the office, I'm planning around the other people that I want to interact with, right? So I'm reaching out to them saying, when are you going to be in such and such a place? Not only are you going to be in the office, which building are you going to be in, et cetera. And so to think about a functional leader kind of having that central gravitational pull that his or her team is going to come in and work around is going to facilitate those interactions, I think, in a meaningful way. And then you're going to get a cross-pollination across hierarchy, potentially. So I think it's a really interesting concept to kind of say, this is our space. And it's not just there for the annual board meeting, but we're doing it as an ongoing way of innovating and mentoring, kind of the full spectrum. I think it's kind of an interesting thought.
The twist that we're working on right now is that you still have digital in the middle of this. So imagine that leader workflow room is also still has the camera that's still attached to Zoom or Teams, and that you need to now think through the angle of how the boards are being presented or the walls being presented in addition to the individual, because that's all part of the conversation. Whether you're echoing those boards in Miro or you're just pointing to them and they've got their own PowerPoint, you still need to make that as easy as possible for the remote participants to be part of that experience of seeing it live.
Kina, here's a quick question for you. Can you give an example where one of these pillars or a couple of these pillars really became a priority for a client as they've worked through a workplace planning or strategy session?
Yeah, so a lot of my clients actually were able to connect in with all of the pillars, but one client in particular asked their employees to come into the office 5 days a week. So during, before, and after the COVID pandemic, they were expanding into a new building during the pandemic and didn't want to lose, of course, any of their employees to companies who were not requiring their employees to come into the office. So what they did was double down on their efforts to incorporate a variety of work settings and social spaces. They especially embrace the creation of a collaborative, innovative, and a lot of focus spaces. So these are 3 of the 6 pillars. And the result was a set of spaces that fostered the ease and free flow of social interactions and, frankly, opportunities for leaders to support their teams, which are the building blocks, of course, of the other 3 pillars: mentorship, learning, and socialization. So the company culture played a large part of this here, and because they valued sort of familial and collaborative working environments above almost everything else, and the prioritization of collaboration, I guess, sort of naturally resulted in an intentional designed workspace and captured all 6 of these pillars. So in the end, they were not only able to retain their talent, but attracted a lot of new talent because the, job candidates were really connected to the values of and the culture of this company.
I think that's the key there as we're encouraging clients is, who are you? Be true to who you are. Don't chase some trend because it's not going to feel authentic, and you're going to attract the right employees who are kind of part of your DNA, if that makes sense.
That's exactly right.
I love that. Crux of our conversation we've been having recently has been around digital equity, and that's been a big focus of ours, is to really think through the furniture in combination with the technology, in combination of that visual persistence display on the wall, the lighting, etc. How does that all come together to be super productive? All right, Kina, anything else when you think about the intentional office as a designer, individual designer and architect? What's resonating with the design community broadly?
I guess let me start by saying the number one job of a designer is to serve their clients and to help them create workspaces that align or maybe even foster their unique culture and purpose. So we are problem solvers by nature and have always strived to, design spaces so that they feature as a specific purpose, whether it's to align with and foster company culture, to meet a specific functional need. That is why an intentional office is in my mind, and it's what designers have always been doing. The difference now, especially after the pandemic, is that clients are more aware of the value of the intentional design in a workspace, and this means that being a designer is being more and more creative and being a little bit more specific in their purpose. And this is what designers get excited about, and what I think resonates really well with the design community, because the intentional office brings the why a space is designed the way it is to the center of a project, And having this sort of North Star grounds, I think, the designer in a meaningful and purposeful way.
Yeah. I love having client conversations where at the heart of the matter, I think it can be so confusing to think through, okay, this is a restack or we're going to lease a new space, whatever it is. And so just bring it around, what's the core, what's the goal, what's that North Star, to your point, Kina, and really direct a conversation to understand the individuals in the setting is so important, and the work of the individual collectively is the work of the organization. And so to be able to kind of pinpoint it a little bit more finitely. It also, I think, designers are struggling a little bit right now because so many of our traditional ratios we've thrown out the window. Right. And so just thought processes, they're looking for, what do I replace this with? And having conversations that you can kind of step through around 6 core functions, I think, can really help.
But that's the exciting part. And that's what I think designers love to do, is they're problem solvers again, and they really want to challenge themselves and be able to create something different and exciting that maybe they haven't seen before.
Yeah. So we've talked about focus. We've talked about kind of innovation to some extent. We've talked a little bit about how this project team can kind of facilitate socialization. I want to talk about socialization just a little bit more. Because I think this is the undercurrent that people think that we want to provide socialization because workers want to come in for a pizza party. But I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's why people want to come in. I think that particularly those newer in their career or newer to an organization are really wanting to understand the individual around them. They're trying to create a network. And if they're not, they should be. So let's talk just a little bit about how unintentional interactions can kind of help build individual networks or individuals, like organizational agility, if that makes sense. So Jason, just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
The first thing that came to mind when you started this conversation was, when Gartner does the employee satisfaction studies, like they have a standard process. One of those questions is, do you have a best friend at work? And it's like, that's the canary in the coal mine if you really peel it all back. That people want to come in more than for just the job. There's mentorship and getting stuff. But there's also this just, you want to be there. And so socialization is an element of that. And we take it to the easy things sometimes because we're trying, like pizza parties and free bagels. It's a draw, right? But you got to go back to how do people foster friendships? Well, it starts with a socialization. It starts with running into each other. Then it comes with a purpose. Like we were on a project, and you can remember that project you were on where it was intense and there was long nights or there was tension, but you came out the other end bonded to some extent.
That's right.
And in fact, you can always ask that, when you made a friend, what was the space like when that happened? Was it a skunk works? Was it a war room? Was it the cafe? And that's how you kind of match those up. If you think about socialization, is there's degrees of socialization, whether they're formal and informal. We tend to think of it formal, but the formal is also equally powerful if you think about how that happens.
Yep. Kina, any thoughts to add there? I know I do some informal mentorship around the office, and this is a very common question that I get asked. How do I get to know more individuals at work? As I think about career progression, I don't even know what anybody else does because I'm kind of in my own silo, because when I come into work, it's just to do my thing. So any other recommendations here?
Yeah, I think part of it is being present and being aware of your surroundings and where people are and where you want to be interacting with folks because you feel the most comfortable. So being aware of who you are, what others are doing, and where those interactions are happening, I think is a huge part of it. But I also, to your point about mentorship, I think they kind of go hand in hand, this socialization and mentorship, because a lot of the times there's peer mentorship that I feel like is just as important as mentorships or say me as senior folks or person.
Yeah, it's funny how that mentorship in the architectural and design community, there's almost that studio mentality that starts young, that it's understood. Kind of the role of how mentorship happens. It's almost like a journeyman relationship to some extent, because you have a studio environment. you got to imagine people coming from different types of, even open plan benching arguably is too extreme, but offices are, this whole thing is being learned now that A&D has naturally practiced for years in terms of how mentorship and coaching happens. But now, what do I do when I'm a law firm? How does that happen,
Yep. All right, so what is the meat? What's the heart of what we're trying to say? I think we holistically believe that every organization is different. What makes their heartbeat is different. But at the core of the conversation is a belief that when an organization's objectives can be linked to the settings and the solutions that are supporting the individual intentions of individual employees, that's where the magic happens. And that's where we really believe culture can be brought to life, organizational objectives can come to fruition, and we're excited about where the future is going to take us. So with that, thanks for joining us on the Tell Me More podcast with Allsteel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue exploring the Design to Do More philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.